You know that one person at work, the one who just, well, complicates things.
Oh, yeah.
Could be a coworker, maybe your boss, even a client sometimes. Leaves you kind of scratching your head.
Definitely. And, you're really not alone with that feeling. There's this book, How to Work with Complicated People by Ryan Leake.
Right, we're digging into that today.
Exactly. And he tackles this specific thing head on.
So it's a common thing then.
It's really common. Leake's research, it showed that something like 46% of Americans deal with these kinds of tricky people every single day, or even multiple times a day at work.
Wow, almost half.
Yeah. And it goes up to 78% who deal with it at least, once a week.
78%. So basically everyone then.
Pretty much. Think about that. It's almost unavoidable in the workplace.
And I guess it's not just like a minor annoyance, is it?
No, not at all. Leake's findings, they really point to some serious stuff, like worse communication across the board,
Okay.
lower morale, teams not trusting each other, unity just kind of eroding,
Yeah, you can feel that sometimes.
and ultimately, people liking their jobs way less. In fact, he found nearly 1 in 2 workers said that dealing with complicated people could actually make them, actively hate their job.
That's huge.
Yeah,
I mean, considering how much of our lives we spend working.
exactly.
So, okay, for you listening right now, our whole mission with this deep dive is to pull out the really useful, actionable bits from Leake's book. We want to give you some tools, some strategies to not just, put up with it, but maybe even thrive when you're working with those. Let's call them uniquely challenging folks.
And Luke, he's got the background for this. He's not just guessing. He's an executive coach, a keynote speaker.
Right.
He's talked to leaders all over, like C-suite people from Fortune 100 companies, big sports teams.
It's a real world experience.
Yeah, and he backs it up with research, too. But what's really interesting, kind of the core idea he builds everything around,
What's that?
is that this whole journey, getting better at working together, it actually starts with realizing that, well, everyone, including ourselves, is complicated in some way.
Okay, let's dig into that. That idea. We are all complicated.
Ah.
That's the first big thing from the book, isn't it? And it definitely feels like a perspective shift.
It really is, yeah. He argues that, before we can even start figuring out why other people seem complicated, we kind of have to look in the mirror first, understand our own stuff.
It's a bit humbling, right?
Yeah.
There's that quote from Mel Robbins.
Oh, yeah. The truth is, none of us are easy to be with. It's so true. And Leake really emphasizes this early on.
And he doesn't just say it right. He actually gives examples from his own life.
Yeah, he gets pretty personal, like talking about how he juggles tons of projects, which might make him seem, checked out sometimes, or admitting he can be hard to read. His mood isn't always stable. He even talks about being an introvert, doing a very extroverted job.
It's pretty honest.
Very. And I think the key takeaway here for you is how easy it is to slip into that mindset of, oh, they are the problem. We all do it.
Totally. Finger pointing is easy.
Right. But Leake encourages us to pause and think, okay, hang on. Maybe I'm part of this dynamic. Maybe I need to shift something. Am I actually as easy to work with as I think I am?
That's a tough question to ask yourself sometimes.
It is, but it opens the door to actually making progress.
So, okay, let's say we accept this idea. We're all a bit complicated. What are the things Leake says we should definitely avoid doing when we're faced with someone who seems particularly challenging?
Well, he flags a couple of common approaches that basically just don't work. The first big one is trying to, fundamentally change the other person.
The fixer-upper approach.
Exactly. He calls it manipulation, basically. And he's right, isn't he? Real, lasting change has to come from within that person.
Yeah, you can't force it.
No. It's driven by their own motivation, not by you trying to, pressure them or mold them. Nobody likes feeling like someone's pet project.
That makes total sense. What's the second ineffective strategy?
He calls the second one canceling them.
Okay, explain that. Because setting boundaries is important, right? He talks about that later.
He does, yeah. And he makes that distinction clear. This isn't about setting healthy boundaries. This is about completely writing someone off, dismissing them entirely based just on their behavior.
Gotcha. Cutting them out completely.
Right. And what's really insightful here is the double standard he points out.
How so?
Well, we tend to judge other people based on their actions, right? What they actually did. But when we evaluate ourselves, we focus on our intentions, what we meant to do.
Yeah. I can see that.
So if someone else messes up and it hurts us, the thought might be, right, they're done. They deserve to be cut off. But if we mess up, We often think, well, hang on, I deserve a pass because, I didn't mean it or there were
It's
circumstances.
a total imbalance.
Completely. And using that kind of total disconnection as your main strategy, it just isolates people and kills any chance for like growth or finding a way to work together later. It undermines everything.
Okay, so trying to change them doesn't work, and just canceling them isn't helpful either. Let's flip to something more positive. Leek talks a lot about the power of understanding.
Yes, this is a big theme. And he tells this really striking story about a woman named Lucy.
What happened with Lucy?
Well, Lucy's story just perfectly shows how easily we can label someone complicated just because we're missing a piece of information.
Okay.
People thought she was rude, maybe standoffish, because often if they greeted her on one particular side, she just wouldn't respond.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. But it turned out she was completely deaf in that ear.
No way.
Yes. And her colleagues had worked alongside her for 8 years without knowing this.
8 years. Wow. That's a long time to misunderstand someone.
It really is. And it wasn't until Lucy felt safe enough to be vulnerable and actually share that the whole perception just flipped.
So the big insight here for you, the listener.
It really hammers home that everyone has a story, right? There are often things going on beneath the surface, invisible factors driving their behavior. And if we can create workplaces where people feel safe enough to actually share some of that stuff, well, that fosters real connection, understanding grows, and those complicated labels just start to fade away.
So the default should be curiosity, not judgment.
Exactly. Assume there's a reason, even if you can't see it yet. Your goal should be to try and understand that reason, not just react to the behavior.
Okay, so instead of fixing or ditching people, we need to shift how we react. How does Leek suggest we reframe our perspective when dealing with these folks?
Yeah, a huge part of his advice is about taking ownership of your own reaction. You can't control them, but you can control how you respond.
Right.
And Leek makes this practical point. Look, we spend a massive chunk of our lives at work, right? He throws out numbers like 85,000, maybe 90,000 hours over a lifetime.
There's a lot of hours.
It really is.
Yeah.
So it's actually in your own best interest to make that time better, more positive, more productive by learning how to handle these tricky interactions effectively. Your job satisfaction is tied directly to these relationships.
And it's bigger than just us, right? He mentioned the ripple effect.
Totally. Company culture, morale. It's not some abstract thing floating in the air. It's literally built one conversation, one interaction at a time. Your behavior, how you handle things, it becomes part of the story people tell about working there.
Right.
And every interaction sends out these ripples. If you can find a way to positively influence even one or two tricky individuals, that can spread through their networks too.
He had that simple example, didn't he? The pharmacy one.
Yeah, it's small but powerful. Normally you go to the pharmacy, it's very transactional, right? Name, birthday, insurance.
Efficient.
Leek suggests just intentionally tweaking that slightly. Instead of just the facts, genuinely ask, so how are you feeling today?
Just a simple human question.
Right. It can totally change the feel of that interaction.
Right.
And similarly, he talks about remembering someone's half birthday. These small, unexpected kindnesses can have a surprisingly big positive effect.
Okay, this leads us to a really interesting, maybe slightly counterintuitive idea he raises.
Yeah.
The actual value of complicated people.
Yeah, this is where it gets really intriguing. He argues you actually need these people.
Need them. Why?
Because their different perspectives, their unique experiences, even their quirks, are incredibly valuable. They're often the ones who challenge assumptions, who push back against the status quo.
Right, they prevent groupthink.
Exactly. That's often where innovation comes from. If everyone agreed on everything all the time, how would new ideas ever emerge? How would things get better?
He gave some funny examples, didn't he? Like the stapler guy?
Yeah. Quinn and his specific stapler, Riley with the rubber ducks, Harper, who insisted on using Comic Sans.
Comic Sans. Bold move.
Right. But these illustrate the surface level quirks. He also points out there are often deeper drivers, less visible things like, ambition, ego, maybe a deep resistance to change. And it's when all these different personalities with their different motivations and stories come together, that's when, as Leek puts it, magic happens.
The collision creates something new.
Precisely. Innovation often sparks from that friction, from different ways of seeing the world rubbing up against each other. So the key insight for you is to try and shift your view. Start seeing them just as problems or competitors and start seeing their potential as collaborators, even with their complications.
Okay, so recognize our own complexity. Avoid trying to fix or cancel people. Seek understanding, shift our perspective, see their value. What's the next big piece in Leek's approach?
Managing your expectations. This is a huge one.
Meaning?
Meaning, Leek says, basically, stop being so surprised when people act in ways you find complicated.
Okay. Expect it, you mean?
Kind of, yeah. It's part of being human. We need to embrace a certain level of imperfection, maybe even learn to find effectiveness amidst a bit of chaos.
That's hard for people who like things neat and tidy.
It is. And he also says, don't expect people to change unless you see them actively trying to change. Are they getting coaching, reading self-help books, asking for feedback? If not, don't hold your breath waiting for a transformation.
Accept the reality.
Yeah, except that dealing with humans is rarely going to be perfectly easy or predictable or, frankly, always pleasant.
He used that great quote from Donald Miller.
Oh, yeah. When you stop expecting people to be perfect, you can like them for who they are.
That really landed.
It does. Leek suggests doing an expectations detox. Just remind yourself that other people are usually wrapped up in their own world, their own survival, their own stresses.
Right.
They're probably not intentionally trying to annoy you with their specific pet peeve. They might not even realize it is your pet peeve.
So manage expectations even before a meeting or interaction.
Exactly. He suggests literally taking a moment beforehand. Remind yourself, okay, the people in this room are human. They might be tired, stressed, emotional, busy. They're fallible. Setting that baseline can make a huge difference in how you react.
This seems connected to the next idea about overriding those gut reactions, the fight or flight thing.
Absolutely. Because complicated people or difficult situations, they can really trigger our basic self-protection instincts, right? Fight, flight, or maybe freeze.
Yeah, definitely felt that.
Leek says we need to watch out for 3 main triggers. First, discomfort.
Discomfort. Okay, but shouldn't we avoid discomfort?
Well, he argues we should actually try to lean into it sometimes, lean into the awkwardness, the vulnerability.
Why?
Because often new things, growth, positive change, they feel uncomfortable at first. Maybe that person's different way of doing things feels weird, but it might actually be pushing you to grow, challenging your own limits.
Okay, that makes sense. What's the second trigger?
Unfamiliarity. Our brains are kind of wired to see different as potentially dangerous.
Right, a survival instinct.
Totally. But in the Herc place, Leek says we need to actively push back against that initial fear with curiosity. Just because their perspective is unfamiliar doesn't mean it's wrong or threatening.
Got it. And the third trigger?
The lack of control. This is a big one for a lot of us, especially at work.
We like to feel in control.
We do. It makes us feel safe, effective. But complicated people are, well, often hard to control. That's part of why they feel complicated.
Sure.
So Leek asks this powerful question. Is trying to control them even possible or even the right goal? Maybe the answer is to relax that grip a little, let people be who they are, and again, bring in curiosity. He finds that being genuinely curious actually reduces your own need to feel in control.
So curiosity over control. Instead of defense, get curious. Okay, so after we manage expectations and bypass those gut reactions, Leek talks about reframing. Reframing complicated. What's that about?
Reframing is all about the story you tell yourself. It's about consciously choosing a more constructive narrative about the people you find difficult.
Because the stories we tell ourselves matter.
Hugely.
Yeah.
He points out that these narratives often pop up unconsciously, and they can be full of our own biases. It takes real intentional effort to notice them, unpack them, and maybe discard the unhelpful ones.
He mentioned his survey results showing really negative feelings tied to that complicated label.
Yeah, people have strong reactions, and those preconceived ideas can totally cloud how we see someone and interact with them.
So what's the alternative?
It takes maturity, he says. Maturity to actually name your own feelings, your biases, and then actively ask, okay, is there another side to this story? Is there another way to look at this? And he shared some really great empathetic definitions of complicated that people offered in his research. Things like someone who has stuff on their plate that I might not know about.
Right, acknowledging the unseen.
Or that image he uses, everyone carries an invisible backpack.
That's such a powerful visual.
Yeah.
The backpack full of stuff we don't see.
Exactly. It's a great reminder. So Leek warns against jumping straight to the hypothesis of villainy, just assuming bad intentions.
Okay.
Try to separate your experience of their behavior from a final judgment on their character. And remember, everyone's the main character in their own movie, right? That helps build empathy.
Hold opinions lightly. Be willing to change them.
Yes. Hold them with open hands, open minds, ready to learn more.
And this isn't just about being nice, is it?
Hmm.
He connects this openness to innovation again.
Absolutely. It's not just about agreeableness. Actively seeking out diverse viewpoints, even from people you find prickly or complicated, is crucial for innovation and avoiding that dangerous groupthink. He tells that cool story about William Wrigley Jr., the chewing gum guy.
Yeah.
Well, apparently he started out selling soap and gave away baking soda as a freebie, but the baking soda became more popular.
Huh. Didn't know that.
Right. It shows the value of listening to what people actually want, even if it messes up your plan. You can't just wish everyone was a clone of you. You need those different opinions, different ways of doing things.
Diversity drives invention.
Critically important. So it's about actively appreciating what even those difficult personalities might bring to the table.
So appreciate the prickly people too.
God.
Got it. Okay, next, Leek talks about collaboration not just as an activity, but as a mindset.
Yes. This is a key shift. Moving away from seeing work as just your individual struggle and towards seeing the whole thing as a collab. Like asking questions internally. Okay, what could we create together here? How could she bring her strengths and I bring mine and we build something that's a blend of us?
So it was an intentional choice you make.
Exactly. Intentionally adopting that collaborative mindset can actually break those cycles of frustration you get into with difficult people.
Choosing cooperation over competition.
Trust over suspicion, communication over control, interaction over just imposing your way. It means tuning in more. What's their pace? What are their preferences? How can we merge that with mine?
He mentioned that Kobe Bryant anecdote.
Yeah, about being impatient and realize how that came across. It's about that self-awareness piece. Again, how might my behavior be perceived as complicated by someone else?
And he pointed out that gap, didn't he, between how managers think conflict is resolved versus how employees see it.
Right. It really highlights that need for leaders, especially, to be aware of how things are actually landing. There was even a gender difference noted in reported resolution rates.
Interesting.
But ultimately, he circles back to curiosity again, asking that simple but deep question, what's it like to be you? That builds compassion, understanding, even if it makes things feel more complicated in a good way because you're seeing their humanity more clearly. He uses that brain analogy. It's the connections, the sparks between the neurons that drive action, not just improving one neuron in isolation.
Love that analogy. The connections matter most. Okay, this leads him to the 5 people cues. What are these cues?
The 5 people cues are like 5 different quotients of connection, 5 areas that really impact how well we connect and collaborate.
Okay, what's the first one?
First is IQ, connection intelligence quotient, but he broadens this way beyond just book smarts.
Right.
It's about connecting on a knowledge level, understanding different kinds of smart. He gave that example of himself learning about hair and makeup to connect better with people in the beauty industry.
So meeting people in their world of knowledge.
Exactly. Recognizing brain smart, people smart, street smart, all the different forms. So, IQ connection, understand their knowledge.
Got it. Cue number 2.
EQ connection, emotional intelligence, this is huge, obviously, our awareness and management of our own emotions and our ability to recognize and respond to emotions in others.
Crucial for tricky dynamics.
Absolutely. Emotions are powerful, they're essential for connection. He lists a whole range of them. Developing EQ is vital when dealing with people who, push your buttons. Emotions carry information, he says. Listen to them. Use them to build bridges. EQ connection. Recognize and manage emotion.
Makes sense. Third cue.
AQ connection adaptability quotient. This is about how well you adjust to change to different situations in real time.
Super important now.
Totally. The workplace is always changing. Being adaptable is key, especially when working with lots of different kinds of people. A high AQ means you can build more bridges, connect with more diverse folks because you're not rigid.
But it's not about being a pushover.
No, he's clear on that. It's not being a chameleon or fake. It's about being an effective, resilient team player. Letting go of ego, not dying on dumb hills, as he puts it. Adaptability and maturity often win over constant conflict. AQ connection. Embrace change and adapt.
Okay, flexible and mature. Fourth cue.
TQ connection technology quotient. Basically, how well you use tech to collaborate.
Yeah, the tech set.
Yeah. He mentions 2 kinds of tech-complicated people, those who struggle to keep up, and those who are maybe too techy, becoming unrelatable. He tells that funny story about the lawyer who accidentally had the kitten filter on during a serious court call.
Oh, no. Huh?
Right. But the point is, Don't judge someone's overall value by their tech skills or lack thereof. And remember, tech can be a tool for human connection, sharing a meme, a quick birthday text. TQ connection. Leverage technology wisely.
Good reminder. And the fifth Q.
The last one is DQ connection decency quotient. This is fundamental, just basic human kindness and respect.
Treat people well.
Pretty much. Integrity, making people feel safe, just being nice. He tackles that old myth about nice guys finish last.
Yeah. Does it hold up?
Nope. Research shows agreeable people aren't actually at a disadvantage in gaining influence or power. So, being decent, it's a skill, a choice. See people as humans, not just cogs in a machine. DQ connection. Treat everyone with basic respect.
IQ, EQ, AQ, TQ, DQ. That's a really helpful framework. Now, he also zooms in on one specific area. GQ connection, the generational quotient. Why pull that one out separately?
Well, GQ connection is all about collaborating across different age groups, which is increasingly vital in today's workforce. You've got multiple generations working side by side.
Right.
He shares a story about his own mom joining his team. Sounded funny at first, but she brought unique value. Understanding generational perspectives just helps things click faster, makes collaboration smoother. And let's face it, you are going to work with people older and younger than you. GQ connection. Bridge generational divides with empathy.
So that generation gap we hear about, is it as big a deal as it's made out to be?
Yeah. He kind of says yes and no. He references the standard breakdown, boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, etc. And yes, different life experiences shape different approaches, different communication styles, different worldviews. That can make things feel complicated sometimes.
Sure.
But the differences aren't impossible to overcome.
So how do we bridge that gap? What are his keys?
He gives 3 main strategies. First, think about how you think about age. Basically, check your own biases. Ageism cuts both ways, right? Judging older folks as out of touch or younger folks as inexperienced or entitled.
Be aware of stereotypes.
Exactly. He uses that Mark Twain quote about how much smarter his father seemed to get as Twain got older. Don't let age warp how you see someone's capabilities. Stay open. Second key, remember what motivates everyone.
Okay.
Focus on the basics. Maslow's hierarchy, right? We all need safety, belonging, purpose, respect. These things cut across generations. Don't let age differences dehumanize people. Find that common ground.
Focus on shared humanity.
Yes. And third, seek to understand their needs. Connect on that level of core needs. It builds patience, makes collaboration way more effective. Everyone, regardless of age, brings value. Build bridges. Listen. Talk.
That's really practical advice. Okay, shifting gears slightly, but still crucial. Communication, obviously key for dealing with anyone, especially complicated folks. How does Leek break down effective communication?
He looks at it from 3 angles: speaking up, speaking down if you're a leader, and choosing the right medium.
Okay, speaking up, what's involved there?
Know your audience. What matters to them? What are their priorities, their values? What do they see as competence? You need to tailor your message. And really listening to understand, not just waiting to talk, is critical. Ask questions. For problem solving, yes, but also just to connect personally. You probably have more in common than you think.
And speaking down for leaders.
Leaders, Leek says, need to be the chief repeating officer, the CRO.
Haha, CRO. I like that.
Right. Repetition is key, especially if you're trying to get through to employees you find, well, complicated. You need to be really intentional about communicating the vision, goals, processes, expectations.
And the tough stuff, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Changes, layoffs, performance issues, he says. Keep it real. Don't sugarcoat, but be empathetic. Give context. And remember, how you treat people ultimately sends the loudest message.
Okay, and the third part was the medium using the right tools.
Exactly. Like video calls, we're all doing tons of them, master the etiquette, dress appropriately, do your dress code homework, he calls it, know when to talk, when to listen, make sure everyone gets heard, cameras on if possible, active listening is even more important virtually, know the platform, be flexible, use humor.
What about written stuff like email?
Email. He thinks most work emails are pretty ineffective.
Really?
Yeah. Focus on being clear, concise, positive, respectful. Use supportive language, not accusations. Be super clear about what you need and by when bullet points help, right? So you cannot be misunderstood. And always aim for that human connection, even in writing.
And finally, good old in-person interaction.
Yeah, skills might be rusty after lots of remote work. Be aware of body language, yours and theirs. Use it intentionally to show you're open, collaborative. Basic manners matter. Eye contact, don't interrupt. No belittling comments, use names right, remember their role, and listen more than you talk.
Simple rules, but easy to forget. Okay, he briefly lists some common complicated types, the perfectionist, the worrier, etc., but then dives deeper into dealing with complicated customers. What his take there?
Well, he acknowledges customer service has changed. Maybe aiming for constant total happiness isn't realistic or even possible anymore.
Interesting point.
Yeah. And he notes, isn't it funny how we often try harder to understand difficult customers than difficult colleagues?
Yeah, sure.
So, 3 strategies for customers. 1, surprise them with kindness. Go on offense with niceness. Be proactively kind. It de-escalates, builds loyalty. 2, listen to understand, not just to respond. Be objective, curious. Value negative feedback. Those prickly people can burst your bubble in a useful way sometimes.
Okay.
And 3, don't let where you work determine how you work. Have your own high standards, like that Buc-ee's gas station example he uses, known for great service in an industry not famous for it. Don't just meet the low bar.
And if you can't give them what they want.
Get creative with alternatives. Solutions beat apologies most of the time. And sometimes, just let them vent. Let them feel heard. Practice that EQ. Remember, your reaction is your choice.
All right, inevitably disagreements happen. How should we handle those, according to Leek?
First step, make peace with conflict. It's going to happen. It's unavoidable. And actually, it can be productive.
It's not always bad.
No, conflict itself isn't good or bad. It depends entirely on how you handle it, your EQ again, and what comes out of it. He notes most people think they handle feedback well, but are they truly open to real discussion, real disagreement? Healthy disagreement is necessary for progress. It's a tool, not something to just avoid. Often the people labeled complicated are the ones willing to speak up, and they're valuable. He tells a story about taking a personality test and learning the power of just saying, you know what, you're right, that's a good point, tell me more. It lowers defenses, focuses on truth.
That takes humility.
It does. He also says pay attention during disagreements to different perspectives. The veterans' experience, the data people research, the newbies' fresh eyes, all are valuable, none are perfect.
And focus the conflict.
Yes. Try to minimize conflict about relationships or core values. Those are tough. But conflict about the task, that's often necessary and helpful. Fight forward, he calls it. See disagreement as a chance to innovate, find a better way, maybe a third option where everyone's needs get considered.
Okay, but let's be real. Sometimes.
Yeah.
It feels like collaboration is just impossible with certain people. What then? That's where boundaries come in.
Exactly. Leek is realistic. He acknowledges you just won't be able to collaborate effectively with everyone. Some people are, for whatever reason, just impossibly complicated in a work context.
And it's not necessarily your fault.
No, he stresses that. It's not on you, it's their pattern. Recognize when someone is truly unpoachable, maybe unfireable in a frustrating way. You have to make peace with that reality.
So boundaries protect you.
Yes. They protect your well-being, your safety, your productivity. Boundaries are about defining how you feel, how you'll communicate that, and what consequences you will enforce. They give you back some control, some hope.
But they can't fix everything.
Right. They can't magically save a relationship or project that's fundamentally broken, but setting them has huge benefits. Better work-life balance, less emotional energy wasted, more focus on your work, shifting into creative mode, setting a good example. They shield you from ridiculous expectations.
How do you start setting them?
Start small, get some quick wins, maybe delaying non-urgent requests, time-boxing email checking, learn to say no, gracefully focus on what you can do instead of a flat refusal.
They have to be consistent.
Crucial. A boundary isn't real until it's communicated and consistently enforced. Avoid boundary creep, making exceptions all the time. Remember, it's for your well-being, and ultimately it benefits the working relationship too, even if it feels awkward initially.
And keep it professional.
Absolutely. Keep it classy.
Yeah.
Don't fight toxicity with more toxicity. Use clear, professional language, and set them proactively, not just when you finally snap out of frustration.
Okay, this brings us to the final section, which feels really empowering. Leek talks about choices that change you, even if the other people stay exactly the same.
Yes, this is all about your internal agency, what you can control. And he starts with a big one, forgiveness.
Forgiveness at work.
Yeah. He frames it as essential, especially for leaders dealing with difficult people. But it's not about letting them off the hook. It's a gift you give yourself.
How so?
It's about letting go of the anchors, the resentment, the bitterness that are weighing you down.
Okay, I like that framing. What other choices does he highlight?
Choose the kind of colleague you want to be. Don't sink to their level. No petty revenge. Focus on your own integrity. Also, choose to let go of the small stuff and maybe even some of the not so small stuff. Is it really worth your precious energy?
Pick your battles.
Right. And choose to give bitterness an expiration date. It's okay to be hurt, but don't stay stuck there. Acknowledge the pain, process it, maybe get help like therapy or have tough conversations, but set a timeline to consciously move on.
Don't let it fester forever.
Exactly. He even suggests choose to forgive coworkers before they hurt you.
Before, how does that work?
It's like a preemptive decision. Decide now that you will operate from a place of forgiveness. It guides how you react in the moment, which is way easier than trying to dredge up forgiveness when you're already angry or upset.
Interesting idea. Proactive forgiveness.
Yeah. And finally, the big one. Choose to move forward. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, he clarifies. It's choosing not to let the past dictate your present and future. Don't carry baggage from old jobs into new ones. Focus on what you control, your reaction. Build that resilience, that ability to bounce back.
So wow, bringing it all together, working effectively with complicated people.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's less about fixing them and much more about, well, managing ourselves.
That's really the core message, isn't it? Is self-awareness, managing our expectations, trying to understand different viewpoints, communicating clearly, setting those crucial boundaries, and ultimately choosing how we respond.
Those choices are where our power lies.
Exactly. They empower you to navigate these tricky dynamics, even if the other person never changes an inch.
So thinking about all this, here's a final thought for you, the listener. Reflecting on your own work life right now. Which of those people cues, AQ, EQ, AQ, TQ, DQ, or even GQ, or maybe which of those personal choices like forgiveness or setting boundaries resonates the most? What's just one small, concrete step you could take, maybe even today, to start shifting your approach based on what we've discussed? And here's maybe the biggest question to ponder. What if the most powerful change you can make in how you experience work actually starts with better understanding and better managing your own wonderfully complicated self?